Hello, my kiddos. All right, the last reading, we left off where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli were chasing down the orcs that captured Merry and Pippin, and it looks like Pippin dropped his brooch from his elven coat to give them a clue that they were still alive and, well, at least alive. So anyway, that's where we pick it up now. So the third day of their pursuit began. During all its long hours of cloud and fitful sun, they hardly paused, now striding, now running, as if no weariness could quench the fire that burned in them. They seldom spoke. Over the wide solitude they passed, and their elven cloaks faded against the background of the gray-green fields. Even in the cool sunlight of midday, few but elvish eyes would have marked them, until they were close at hand. Often in their hearts they thanked the Lady of Lorien for the gift of Lembas, for they could eat of it and find new strength even as they ran. All day the track of their enemies led straight on, going northwest without a break or run. As once again the day wore to its end, they came to long treeless slopes where the land rose, swelling up towards a line of low, humpbacked downs ahead. The orc trail grew fainter as it bent north towards them, for the ground became harder and the grass shorter. Far away to the left, the river Entwash wound, a silver thread in a green floor. No moving thing could be seen. Often Aragorn wondered that they saw no sign of beast or man. The dwellings of the Rohirrim were, for the most part, many leagues away to the south, under the wooded eaves of the White Mountains, now hidden in mist and cloud. Yet the horse lords had formerly kept many herds and studs in the Eastamnet, this easterly region of their realm. And there the herdsmen had wandered much, living in camp and tent, even in wintertime. But now all the land was empty, and there was a silence that did not seem to be the quiet of peace. At dusk they halted again. Now twice 12 leagues they had passed over the plains of Rohan, and the wall of Emyn Muil was lost in the shadows of the east. The young moon was glimmering in a misty sky, but it gave small light, and the stars were veiled. Now do I most grudge a time of rest or any halt in our chase, said Legolas. The orcs have run before us, as if the very whips of Sauron were behind them. I fear they have already reached the forest and the dark hills, and even now are passing into the shadows of the trees. Gimli ground his teeth. This is a bitter end to our hope and to our this is a bitter end to our hope and to all our toil, he said. To hope maybe, but not to toil, said Aragorn. We shall not turn back here. Yet I am weary. He gazed back along the way that they had come towards the night gathering in the east. There is something strange at work in this land. I distrust the silence. I distrust even the pale moon. The stars are faint, and I am weary as I have seldom been before, weary as no ranger should be with a clear tale to follow. There is some will that lends speed to our foes and sets an unseen barrier before us, a weariness that is in the heart more than in the limb. Truly, said Legolas, that I have known since we first came down from the Emyn Muil, for the will is not behind us, but before us. He pointed away toward the land of Rohan, into the darkling west, under the sickle moon. Saruman, muttered Aragorn. But he shall not turn us back. Halt we must once more, for see, even the moon is falling into a gathering cloud. But north lies our road between Down and Fen when day returns. As before, Legolas was first afoot, if indeed he had ever slept. Awake, awake, he cried. It is a red dawn. Strange things await us by the eaves of the forest. Good or evil I do not know, but we are called. Awake! The others sprang up. and almost at once they set off again. Slowly the downs drew near. It was still an hour before noon when they reached them, green slopes rising to bare ridges that ran in a line straight towards the north. At their feet the ground was dry and the turf short, but a long strip of sunken land, some 10 miles wide, lay between them and the river, wandering deep in dim thickets of reed and rush. Just to the west of the southernmost slope there was a great ring, where the turf had been torn and beaten by many trampling feet. From it the Orc trail ran out again, turning north along the dry skirts of the hills. Aragorn halted and examined the tracks closely. "They rested here a while," he said, "but even the outward trail is already old. I feel that our heart spoke truly, Legolas. I feel that your heart spoke truly, Legolas. It is thrice 12 hours, I guess, since the Orcs stood where we now stand. If they held to their pace, then at sundown yesterday they would reach the borders of Fangorn. I can see nothing away north or west but grass dwindling into mist," said Gimli. "Could we see the forest if we climbed the hills?" "It is still far away," said Aragorn. "If I remember rightly, these downs run 8 leagues or more to the north, and then northwest to the issuing of the Entwash. There lies still a wide land, another 15 leagues it may be." "Well, let us go on," said Gimli. "My legs must forget the miles. They would be more willing if my heart were less heavy." The sun was sinking when, at last, they drew near to the end of the line of downs. For many hours they had marched without rest. They were going slowly now, and Gimli's back was bent. Stone hard are the dwarves in labor or journey. But this endless chase began to tell on him, as all hope faded in his heart. Aragorn walked behind him, grim and silent, stooping now and again to scan some print or mark upon the ground. Only Legolas still stepped as lightly as ever, his feet hardly seeming to press the grass, leaving no footprints as he passed. But in the waybread of elves he found all the sustenance that he needed, and he could sleep, if sleep it could be called by men, resting his mind in the strange paths of elvish dreams, even as he walked open-eyed in the light of this world. "Let us go up on this green hill," he said. Warily they followed him, climbing the long slope until they came out upon the top. It was a round hill, smooth and bare, standing by itself, the most northerly of the downs. The sun sank and the shadows of evening fell like a curtain. They were alone in a gray, formless world without mark or measure. Only far away northwest there was a deeper darkness against the dying light, the mountains of mist and the forest at their feet. "Nothing can we see to guide us here," said Gimli. "Well, now we must halt again and wear the night away. It is growing cold." "The wind is north from the snows," said Aragorn. "And ere morning it will be in the east," said Legolas. "But rest if you must. Yet do not cast all hope away. Tomorrow is unknown. Rede oft is found at the rising of the sun." "3 suns already have risen on our chase and brought no counsel," said Gimli. The night grew ever colder. Aragorn and Gimli slept fitfully, and whenever they awoke they saw Legolas standing beside them, or walking to and fro, singing softly to himself in his own tongue. And as he sang, the white stars opened into the hard black vault above. So the night passed. Together they watched the dawn grow slowly in the sky, now bare and cloudless, until at last the sunrise came. It was pale and clear. The wind was in the east, and all the mists had rolled away. Wide lands lay bleak about them in the bitter light. Ahead and eastward they saw the windy uplands of the wold of Rohan that they had already glimpsed many days ago from the great river. Northwestward stalked the dark forest of Fangorn. Still 10 leagues away stood its shadowy eaves, and its further slopes faded into the distant blue. Beyond there glimmered far away, as if floating on a very gray cloud, the white head of tall Methedras, the last peak of the misty mountains. Out of the forest the Entwash flowed to meet them, its stream now swift and narrow, and its banks deep cloven. The Orc trail turned from the downs towards it. Following with his keen eyes the trail to the river, and then the river back towards the forest, Aragorn saw a shadow on the distant green, a dark, swift-moving blur. He cast himself upon the ground and listened again intently, but Legolas stood beside him, shading his bright elven eyes with his long, slender hand. And he saw not a shadow nor a blur, but the small figures of horsemen, many horsemen, and the glint of morning on the tips of their spears was like the twinkle of minute stars beyond the edge of mortal sight. Far behind them a dark smoke rose in thin, curling threads. There was a silence in the empty fields, and Gimli could hear the air moving in the grass. "Riders!" cried Aragorn, springing to his feet. "Many riders, on swift steeds, are coming towards us." "Yes," said Legolas. "There are 105. Yellow is their hair, and bright are their spears. Their leader is very tall." Aragorn smiled. "Keen are the eyes of elves," he said. "Nay, the riders are little more than 5 leagues distant," said Legolas. 5 leagues or 1, said Gimli. "We cannot escape them in this bare land. Shall we wait for them here or go on our way?" "We will wait," said Aragorn. "I am weary and our hunt has failed, or at least others were before us, for these horsemen are riding back down the Orc trail. We may get news from them." "Or spears," said Gimli. "There are 3 empty saddles, but I see no hobbits," said Legolas. "I did not say we would hear good news," said Aragorn, "but evil or good, we will await it here." The 3 companions now left the hilltop, where they might be an easy mark against the pale sky, and they walked slowly down the northward slope. A little above the hill's foot they halted, and wrapping their cloaks about them, they sat huddled together upon the faded grass. The time passed slowly and heavily. The wind was thin and searching. Gimli was uneasy. "What do you know of these horsemen, Aragorn?" he said. "Do we sit here waiting for sudden death?" "I have been among them," said Aragorn. "They are proud and willful, but they are true-hearted, generous in thought and deed, bold but not cruel, wise but unlearned, writing no books but singing many songs, after the manner of the children of men before the dark years. But I do not know what has happened here of late, nor in what mind the Rohirrim may now be between the traitor Saruman and the threat of Sauron. They have long been the friends of the people of Gondor, though they are not akin to them. It was in forgotten years long ago that Eorl the Young brought them out of the north, and their kinship is rather with the Bardings of Dale, and with the Beorings of the wood, among whom may still be seen many men tall and fair, as are the riders of Rohan. At least they will not love the Orcs." "But Gandalf spoke of a rumor that they pay tribute to Mordor," said Gimli. "I believe it no more than did Boromir," answered Aragorn. "You will soon learn the truth," said Legolas. "Already they approach." At length even Gimli could hear the distant beat of galloping hoofs. The horsemen, following the trail, had turned from the river and were drawing near the downs. They were riding like the wind. Now the cries of clear, strong voices came ringing over the fields. Suddenly they swept up with a noise like thunder, and the foremost horseman swerved, passing by the foot of the hill, and leading the host back southward along the western skirts of the downs. After him they rode, a long line of mail-clad men, swift, shining, foul, and fair to look upon. Their horses were of great stature, strong and clean-limbed. Their gray coats glistened, their long tails flowed in the wind. Their manes were braided on their proud necks. The men that rode them matched them well, tall and long-limbed. Their hair, flaxen pale, flowed under their light helms, and streamed in long braids behind them. Their faces were stern and keen. In their hands were tall spears of ash. Painted shields were slung on their backs. Long swords were at their belts. Their burnished shirts of mail hung down upon their knees. In pairs they galloped by, and though every now and then one rose in his stirrups and gazed ahead to either side, they appeared not to perceive that the 3 strangers sitting silently and watching them. The host had almost passed when suddenly Aragorn stood up and called in a loud voice, "What news from the north, riders of Rohan?" With astonishing speed and skill, they checked their steeds, wheeled, and came charging round. Soon the three companions found themselves in a ring of horsemen moving in a running circle, up the hill slope behind them and down, round and round them, and drawing ever inwards. Aragorn stood silent, and the other two sat without moving, wondering what way things would turn. Without a word or cry, suddenly the riders halted. A thicket of spears were pointed towards the strangers, and some of the horsemen had bows in hand, and their arrows were already fitted to the string. Then one rode forward, a tall man, taller than all the rest, for his helm as a crest, a white horsetail flowed. He advanced until the point of his spear was within a foot of Aragorn's breast. Aragorn did not stir. Who are you, and what are you doing in this land?" said the rider, using the common speech of the West, in a manner and tone like the speech of Boromir, man of Gondor. "I am called Strider," answered Aragorn. "I came out of the north. I am hunting orcs." The rider leaped from his horse, giving his spear to another who rode up and dismounted at his side. He drew his sword and stood face to face with Aragorn, surveying him keenly and not without wonder. At length he spoke again. "At first I thought that you yourselves were orcs," he said, "but now I see that it is not so. Indeed, you know little of orcs if you go hunting them in this fashion. They were swift and well armed, and there were many. You would have changed from hunters to prey if ever you had overtaken them. But there is something strange about you, Strider." He bent his clear, bright eyes again upon the ranger. "That is no name for a man that you gave. And strange, too, is your raiment. Have you sprung out of the grass? How did you escape our sight? Are you elvish folk?" "No," said Aragorn. "Only one of us is an elf, Legolas from the woodland realm in distant Mirkwood. But we have passed through Lothlorien, and the gifts and favor of the lady go with us." The rider looked at them with renewed wonder, but his eyes hardened. "Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood, as old tales tell," he said. "Few escape her nets, they say. These are strange days, but if you have her favor, then you also are net weavers, and sorcerers, maybe." He turned a cold glance suddenly upon Legolas and Gimli. "Why do you not speak, silent ones?" he demanded. Gimli rose and planted his feet firmly apart. His hand gripped the handle of his axe, and his dark eyes flashed. "Give me your name, Horsemaster, and I will give you mine, and more besides," he said. "As for that," said the rider, staring down at the dwarf, "the stranger should declare himself first. Yet I am named Eomer, son of Eomund, and am called the third marshal of the Riddermark." "Then, Eomer, son of Eomund, third marshal of Riddermark, let Gimli the dwarf, Gloin's son, warn you against foolish words. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you." Eomer's eyes blazed, and the men of Rohan murmured angrily and closed in, advancing their spears. "I would cut off your head, beard and all, Master Dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground," said Eomer. "He stands not alone," said Legolas, bending his bow and fitting an arrow with hands that moved quicker than sight. "You would die before your stroke fell." Eomer raised his sword, and things might have gone ill, but Aragorn sprung between them and raised his hand. "Your pardon, Eomer," he cried. "When you know more, you will understand why you have angered my companions. We intended no evil to Rohan, nor to any of its folk, neither to man nor to horse. Will you not hear our tale before you strike?" "I will," said Eomer, lowering his blade, "but wanderers in the Riddermark would be wise to be less haughty in these days of doubt. First tell me your right name." "First tell me whom you serve," said Aragorn. "Are you friend or foe of Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor?" "I serve only the Lord of the Mark, Theoden, King's son of Thengel," answered Eomer. "We do not serve the power of the Black Land far away, but neither are we yet at open war with him. And if you are fleeing from him, then you had best leave this land. There is trouble now on all our borders, and we are threatened." but we desire only to be free and to live as we have lived, keeping our own and serving no foreign lord, good or evil. We welcomed guests kindly in the better days, but in these times the unbidden stranger finds us swift and hard. Come, who are you? Whom do you serve? At whose command do you hunt orcs on our land? I serve no man, said Aragorn, but the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they may go. There are few among mortal men who know more of orcs, and I do not hunt them in this fashion out of choice. The orcs whom we pursued took captive 2 of my friends. In such need a man that has no horse will go on foot, and he will not ask for leave to follow the trail, nor will he count the heads of the enemy save with a sword. I am not weaponless. Aragorn threw back his cloak. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Andúril shone like a sudden flame as he swept it out. Elendil, he cried, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called Elisar, the Elfstone, Dúnadan, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. Gimli and Legolas looked at their companion in amazement, for they had not seen him in this mood before. He seemed to have grown in stature, while Éomer had shrunk, and in his living face they caught a brief vision of the power and majesty of the kings of stone. For a moment it seemed to the eyes of Legolas that a white flame flickered in the brows of Aragorn like a shining crown. Éomer stepped back, and a look of awe was in his face. He cast down his proud eyes. These are indeed strange days, he muttered. Dreams and legends spring to life out of the grass. Tell me, Lord, he said, what brings you here, and what was the meaning of the dark words? Long has Boromir, son of Denethor, been gone seeking an answer, and the horse that we lent him came back riderless. What doom do you bring out of the north? The doom of choice, said Aragorn. You may say this to Theoden, son of Thingol. Open war lies between him, with Sauron, or against him. None may live now as they have lived, and few shall keep what they call their own. But of these great matters we will speak later, if chance allows. I will come myself to the king. Now I am in great need, and I ask for help, or at least for tidings. You heard that we are pursuing an orc host that carried off our friends. What can you tell us? That you need not pursue them further, said Éomer. The orcs are destroyed. And our friends? We found none but orcs. But that is strange indeed, said Aragorn. Did you search the slain? Were there no bodies other than those of orc kind? They would be small, only children to your eyes, unshod but clad in grey. There were no dwarves nor children, said Éomer. We counted all the slain, despoiled them, and then we piled the carcasses and burned them, as is our custom. The ashes are smoking still. We do not speak of dwarves or children, said Gimli. Our friends were hobbits. Hobbits, said Éomer, and what may they be? It is a strange name. A strange name for a strange folk, said Gimli, but these were very dear to us. It seems that you have heard in Rohan of the words of troubled Minas Tirith. They spoke of the halfling. Those hobbits are halflings. Halflings, laughed the rider that stood before Éomer. Halflings? But they are only a little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Do we walk in legends or on the green earth in the daylight? A man may do both, said Aragorn, for not we, but those who come afar will make the legends of our time. The green earth, say you? That is a mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day. Time is pressing, said the rider, not heeding Aragorn. We must hasten south, Lord. Let us leave these wild folk to their fan cries. Or let us bind them and take them to the king. Peace, Eothane, said Éomer in his own language. Leave me a while. Tell the Eored to assemble on the path, and make ready to ride to the Entwade. All right, I'm going to stop there, kiddos. Kind of went over time. Love you always and forever, no matter what.